You got people, like if you go to, face me, it's good.
So we're holding chapter 13, 106 in the Tractate Shabbos. Oireg is the name of the chapter. We ended off yesterday with if God forbid someone had someone in his family that passed away, so it says that everyone should worry that they too may die. So, and similarly, if it's a member of a group, the entire group should worry about death. Some say that some say about it that it refers to where the greatest among them died. Only then they should be concerned, and some say that the Meiskotim, and others say it refers to where the least among them died. So that's really based on the Gemara in Brochis in 61a, which speaks about punishment begins with the least important member. If such a member dies, the others must be concerned that this is the beginning of a plague that will strike them all, God forbid. So, Mishnah said that all who act destructively are exempt. All who act destructively on Shabbos are exempt, except for one who wounds a person or burns something. Because burning is also destructive in a way, because you're destroying the wood or whatever it is. And chovel is destructive. You are harming a person, but you're cooling yourself down. Well, let's see if that's the reason why he is liable. So Amar Lei, go out and teach your brisa outside the study hall. Meaning he wasn't happy about the exemptions, these exceptions, that in these two cases of chovel or mavir, which are also destructive, but in this case he is liable. Why? Why did he tell him to go out and teach it out of the study hall? Because chovel or mavir ain't no mishnah. One who wounds a person or burns something is not an authoritative teaching. For in fact, the person is not liable for his destructive act in this situation as well. In the case of chovel, in case of wounding somebody, or mavir, or burning. And if you want to say that it is an authoritative teaching and a person is indeed be liable for wounding or burning, the ruling concerning one who inflicts a wound must refer to a case where he needs the blood for his dog.
Then he says in a mirror too, because it's enough for he can't come out because he's feeding his dog, whatever.
So it's not really destructive; it's constructive.
Right.
It's destructive for the purpose of constructing something, for helping something. Even though he acted destructively towards the person that he wounded, his act is considered constructive since he needs the blood for his dog.
That's pretty sick.
Right. So mavir with tzurch lefroy. And the ruling concerning one who burns something, I would bring an example of bloodletting.
Yeah, but bloodletting is so the person could get better. You're not
right.
Bloodletting to feed a dog. I mean, that's what I understand.
No. I'm saying I would use an example for destructive that is constructive. Yeah. That was bloodletting. So somebody wounds. Let's say your friend comes to you and he says, I need to do bloodletting, and he said, I need you to help me. So you're wounding him. Right. You know that there's halacha that it's not so simple for a surgeon to operate on his father.
Right, you shouldn't do that.
Why? If his father needs a surgeon, and his son is the best surgeon.
If he's the only one around, it's much.
Right, but so why? Because he has to do something that is destructive in order to repair him. He has to open his chest, whatever it is. So, I'm saying that I would use the example of like somebody wants to do bloodletting and he asks you to wound him, and you're wounding him so he loses blood. And
even
then
if you're getting a shot,
what?
For some a penicillin shot, let's say.
Right. So Mavir Tzorch Lefoy, and the ruling concerning one who burns something must refer to a case where he needs its ashes. He needs the ashes. So in those cases, the person would be liable because his act served some constructive purpose. He needs the ashes. So you're not burning it for just destroying and no purpose. You have a purpose for it. But we learned in our Mishnah, all who act destructively are exempt, without any exception. How can one hold a person liable for performing a purely destructive act of wounding and burning? Masnisin Rabbi Yehuda says our Mishnah follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who is the one who holds that one is always exempt for destructive act. Baisa Rabbi Shimon, and the Baisa cited by Rabbi Abau, however, reflects the view of Rabbi Shimon, who indeed holds that a person is liable for wounding and burning, even when those acts are purely destructive. So what's the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon? My time the Rabbi Shimon, the Itzich Koro. What is the source of Rabbi Shimon for stating exceptions to the principle that one is not liable for performing a destructive act? So what is the so we're going by Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon said that a person is liable for wounding and burning. So what is the source for stating exceptions to the principle that one is not liable for performing a destructive act? Since the pasuk found it necessary to permit circumcision on the Shabbos, even though it is a destructive act. This implies that for ordinary wounding, one is indeed liable.
Okay.
With the Osarachman, Avoras Gabe Basko, and also since the Merciful One prohibited the court to carry out exceptions or to carry out executions by burning on the Shabbos. For example, regarding the daughter of a Kohen who committed adultery, even though the burning is a destructive act, Shmamin and Mavir Bal Mochayv learned from this that for ordinary burning, one is indeed liable.
Why would you do that on Shabbos? You could wait till the next day to burn her.
So there's halacha that you're not allowed to, because it causes them tzar every day that
they're going to get killed.
Right, waiting for the death. So once it's decided, they have to do it right away.
Okay, even on Shabbos. Okay.
You can see it in number 10. A daughter of a Kohen who is guilty of adultery is liable to execution by burning. This is done by pouring molten lead down to her throat. The Gemara in Yevamah 6b discusses it, derives from scripture that the court may not execute a Kohen's daughter on the Shabbos. May not. Okay. According to Rabbi Shimon, burning the woman is considered a destructive act because the fact that it leads to atonement is only an extraneous benefit, not inherent in the burning. By prohibiting this act on the Shabbos, the Torah teaches that one is liable for burning even when it is a destructive act. So it's also. So let's see what it says on top. It says, since the Merciful One prohibited the court to carry out execution by burning on the Shabbos. For example, regarding the daughter of a Kohen who committed adultery. So in this case, it will be pushed off. Learn from this that ordinary burning, one is indeed liable. When are you supposed to push it off? C10, it says, Shimon, a view about a labor not needed for its defined purpose leads them to conclude that one is liable for wounding and burning, even when those acts are purely destructive. A view that holds that a person is liable if his labor serves any need, even extraneous one, According to his view, nothing can be derived from the Torah's sanction to circumcise on the Shabbos or from its prohibition to burn a Kohen's daughter on the Shabbos. Because those acts provide some extraneous benefit, the mitzvah of circumcision is fulfilled, child can now eat truma, the woman's sin is atoned. So hence, wounding and burning are like any other malacha. If they are totally destructive, the person is exempt from punishment. So seemingly that according to Rabbi Shimon, you only exempt if the destructive act is completely destructive. There's no benefit from it whatsoever.
So here he's arguing that burning the woman is constructive.
It's constructive because it serves our atonement, so therefore it's forbidden on Shabbos.
Okay, so you do the Mila on Shabbos because it's Bismana.
Right, so you have to do it because of its man, but on the if you had to push the mitzvah, you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos because it is constructive.
Right, I mean if it was not Bisman, you couldn't do it.
Right, but if it was a destructive act, then you can argue that you can do it on Shabbos even if it's not in its right time. Meaning, let's say you have a baby boy and it had jaundice, you couldn't do the bris. Supposed to do it on Shabbos, you couldn't do it, and now you cannot schedule it the next Shabbos. Why? You have to schedule a different time, not on Shabbos, because it's a constructive act.
Right.
What's so constructive about it? That now the kid can eat truma, he's done with the bris, but if I would argue that there's nothing constructive about a bris, it's only destructive, then you would be allowed to do it on Shabbos because you are not liable for anything that is completely destructive on Shabbos.
Okay.
Problem is that the brit does have a benefit, so
right.
So the Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda also mesakenu k'de Ravashi. What difference is there to me between the repair effected by the circumcision and the repair performed to a utensil? Right. Both of them, you created a repair. So the pasuk must therefore state that circumcision is nevertheless permitted on the Shabbos. What difference is there to me if he acted to cook a lead week for the execution or to cook herbs as was done for the dyes in the Mishkan? The Torah therefore prohibits executions by burning on the Shabbos. Shiur amelaben chulu, the measure of one who whitens, is double the width of a seat, of SIT. Rabbi Yosef Mechavi Koful, Rabbi Yosef demonstrated as a double measure, 2 times the size of a single seat. Rabbi Chia Baram Mechavi Poshtu, Rabbi Chia Barami demonstrated it differently as simple measure. So obviously it requires a lot of I would say elaborations on this concept, exactly what is the understanding of Rabbi Yehuda, what is the understanding of Rabbi Shimon. So you can say that Mila is tikkun. Mila is circumcision is like repairing a kli. It's repairing it, so it doesn't have an ola. So therefore it should be forbidden on Shabbos. The only reason why it's permitted on Shabbos is because it's the right time. So Mila overrides Shabbos. But
right. Otherwise, you don't. I know.
There's a question about a baby that was born with C-section on Shabbos.
Right.
If the following Shabbos you do a bris or not.
So what's the?
Because it's not really.
No, I know. I got it. It's not a natural birth, and therefore it was an artificial delivery, and therefore it's a suffix whether it's the right time.
Yeah.
I got that. So, but okay. So what ends up being the psak?
I think that they don't do it on Shabbos.
Okay. I got the idea of why and all this, but it makes sense.
So one who traps a bird by driving it into a closet. Tzvi Levayis, or a deer by driving into a house. So it's not per se capturing it, like holding onto it, or putting a net around it, or trapping it in any of the trapping methods, but he's just like driving it into a certain area. Chayav, so that he's liable to a chatos offering for performing the labor of trapping. Chacham, but the sages said, a bird is indeed considered trapped by driving it into a closet. As Rabbi Yehuda asserts, but a deer, even if one drives it into a garden, courtyard, or enclosures, he is also liable because that too is considered trapping.
Well, even if the deer comes in on its own and he closes the door behind him, that's trapping.
Right, so the rabbis are adding not just to bayis, not just driving the deer to the bayis, they're adding not only a house but also into a garden, into a courtyard, enclosure. Any enclosure is considered trapping it. Shin Gamliel says, not all enclosures are the same. This is the general rule which is used to determine liability for catching animal on the Shabbos. If the animal is driven into an enclosure which still lacks strapping, he is exempt. Meaning there's still work to do. Just by bringing it into there, it's not completely yours. You still have to trap it. But if he does not like any further trapping, that's it. He did the job. Then he is liable.
How about a mouse trap, or
Right. If you place the mousetrap on Shabbos,
no, you place it before Shabbos.
If you drive the mouth into the mousetrap, and he was caught by the mousetrap, then you don't have to do anything. Meaning that it's trapped.
Right.
Over here is saying mechusal tzido is that you still have another step that is required to actually catch the deer. So if let's say I have a 10-acre lot that is fenced,
right,
and I drove the deer to the 10-acre lot, I can't yet check the deer or use it or do something with it, because even when I enter the 10-acre, I have to actually still catch it.
Right.
You can still run around in within the confines of the 10 acres.
Right.
So we'll see soon what the Gemara means by mechusel tzida, that it's still lacking trapping, that the trapping is not yet completed.
If you have a glue, let's see.
But if you're able to drive the deer into a very narrow place, that's it, it's locked, it can't move, that's already complete.
I'm just saying, let's say you have a glue trap, or you're trying to catch pests, and you put it out before Shabbos.
If you're not driving them to it on Shabbos, then it's fine.
And it just
it's fine.
Happens on it.
Yeah, but it's there from the beginning. You didn't place it on Shabbos.
Right. Okay. I had one time nightmares about mice. I was living in an apartment which was next to a abandoned food store, and I saw them. And when I went to sleep, I'm thinking that something's crawling on me. It was like I was screaming.
Wow. We may not trap fish from a fish pond on Yom Tov.
Okay.
Very nice in Lifnei, and we may catch wild animals or fowl from enclosures in which they were trapped before Yom Tov.
Wow.
So they're already in their cages, so you're just taking it. It's not really constitute trapping. And we may place food before them. So when it comes to fish that are in a fish pond, you're not allowed to give them food on Yom Tov. Nor may we place food before them. When it comes to chaya and oif, animals or fowl, you're allowed to trap them because they're already trapped. They're already yours. But we may catch wild animals or fowl from enclosures, so it's already in the enclosure in which they are trapped in which they were trapped before Yom Tov, and we may place food before them. Now, because I guess fish in the pond is not yet yours until you actually catch it. Animals and birds that are in enclosures, they're already in the enclosure, they are considered yours, and therefore you're allowed to feed them.
So in the fish tank, I guess you're allowed.
Not allowed to feed things that are not yours on Shabbos. That's a question. If you're allowed to feed your fish on Shabbos,
You can feed the cat on Shabbos.
it's yours. You're allowed to. If it's not yours, you're not allowed to.
So if I have your own cat, you can feed
Yeah.
the cat or the
Not
dog.
only that, you are commanded to feed it
You
before
have to.
yourself.
Right. So if you have a fish tank, it should be the
A
same
fish
thing.
tank is not a pond. Over here it speaks
Right.
about a pond.
Right.
If you can go on Yom Tov and catch from the pond, take a net and try to catch
How about you got a
Yes.
koi pond? How about if you have a koi pond? You know what a koi pond is? Okay, you ever see the pond with goldfish in it that people have by their house? And
Oh yeah.
So you should be able to feed. Those are, it's like this tank except it's in the ground.
Yeah.
So. All right.
We may not trap wild animals, fowl, or fish from the enclosures on Yom Tov. And we may not place food before them. So the Mishnah's ruling regarding wild animals poses a difficulty to the Braisa's ruling. And the Mishnah's ruling regarding fowl poses a difficulty to the Braisa's regarding fowl. In both cases, the Mishnah permits trapping them from enclosures on Yom Tov, while the Brisa prohibits it. So first, the Brisa tells us what we learned in the Mishnah. The first part says we just learned in the Mishnah that we're allowed to feed and trap animals that are already in the enclosures on Yom Tov. And then Urmini will learn that you're not allowed to. So Gemara says, understandable that the Mishnah's ruling regarding wild animals does not pose a difficulty to the Braisa's ruling regarding wild animals. This Braisa follows the view of Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah, while this Mishnah follows the rabbis, the sages of our Mishnah, since the sages considered a deer to be trapped when driven into an enclosure, even if it's not per se a house. It went into enclosure. According to the rabbis, it's already trapped.
And like your 10-acre
Seizing it from such an enclosure would be permitted on Yom Tov, as the Mishnah about Yom Tov law ruled. Rabbi Yehuda, however, who does not consider a deer in an enclosure to be trapped, would prohibit seizing it from an enclosure on Yom Tov, since that would constitute trapping. Ela eifis ha'oifis kasher. But although we can account for the discrepancy regarding wild animals, the Mishnah's ruling regarding fowl still poses a difficulty to the Braisa's ruling regarding fowl. But perhaps you will answer that the Mishnah's ruling regarding fowl also does not pose a difficulty to the Braisa's ruling regarding fowl. Because this ruling of the Mishnah, which permits taking the birds, might be referring to a roofed enclosure, in which a bird is considered already trapped. That's trapped, it's roofed, it's closed. This Brisa, which prohibits taking them, might be referring to an enclosure that is not roofed. This cannot be the solution, because a house is roofed. And yet both according to Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis of our Mishnah, tzipur lemigdal ein. Only by driving a bird into a closet is the bird indeed considered trapped. Levais loy, but not by driving it into a house. The contradiction between the Mishnah and the Vaisa regarding Yom Tov law remains. Amar Rabba bar Avuna, Acha b'tzipor dor askinan. Here in our Mishnah, where Rabbi Yehuda and the sages agree that a bird is considered trapped only in a closet, we are dealing with a royal bird. If you sheina makabel mos, because it does not accept mastery. The time of Rabbi Shmuel taught, Lama nikas shmo tzipor dor. Why is it called? Why the bird is called droyer? Pnei shador v'bayis uvas kevasode. Because it lives freely in a house as in a field. The Mishnah and Brisa regarding Yom Tov law, however, deals exclusively with ordinary birds, which become submissive in a roofed enclosure. We can remain with our earlier solution. That Mishnah permits taking birds from a roofed enclosure, whereas the Brisa forbids taking them from an unroofed enclosure. The Gemara now proposes another reconciliation of the apparent contradiction regarding wild animals. Now that you have come to this resolution of the apparent contradiction regarding fowl without attributing it to a Tanoic dispute, we can say also that the Mishnah's ruling regarding wild animals does not pose a difficulty to the Brisa regarding wild animals. This Brisa, which prohibits taking hold of wild animals, is an enclosure in an enclosure on Yom Tov, is dealing with a large enclosure. Whereas this Mishnah, which permits taking it, is dealing with a small enclosure. Similarly, the sages of our Mishnah, who considered a deer to be trapped when driven into enclosure, refer to a small enclosure, and by bringing it into such a narrow, small place, it's already fully trapped. It's considered fully trapped. So the Gemara says, what is a small enclosure and what is considered a big enclosure? Amar Ravashi kolecha deroid basrei. Wherever one can chase the animal, umoti lo bechad shichayo, and reach it in a single lunge or lunge.
Wait, that's it. I never said lunge. I guess it's lunge. Okay.
Beaver cotton.
Like this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Single move of hand, I guess you can.
Yeah.
Grab it. It is considered a small enclosure. What is considered a large enclosure? Inami kolecha de nofel tula l'chsolim adode. Wherever the shadows of the walls reach one another. Bevar koton. It is considered a small enclosure. Veidach bevar goto, while anything else is a large enclosure. Wherever there are not many corners into which an animal can escape, Bevar Koton is considered a small enclosure, while anything else is large enclosure. So we have a few indicators of what considered large and what considered small enclosure. The law follows Rabbi Gamliel that one is liable for driving a deer only into an enclosure in which is considered already trapped, a small enclosure. You say halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel, it means that there was a machlokes. That our Mishnah, the implication is that the sages of our Mishnah disagree and equate all types of enclosures. But we have explained that the sages too permit taking an animal only from a small enclosure in which the animal is considered already trapped. But what is the difference to you if I imply that there was a dispute? If the sages do not dispute Rav Shin Gamliel's statement, my ruling is certainly correct. Are you telling me to learn the tradition for no purpose? That it should be like his song? If one traps a blind or a sleeping deer, chayav. But if he traps a deer that is lame, old, or sick, he is exempt.
Because you can't use it.
Maybe because it's not considered trapping it.
It might be treif.
No, I'm saying the actual trapping. Because if you're trapping a lion on Shabbos, you're also liable.
Yeah, okay.
Even though you can't eat it.
They can do other things with it. I don't know. Skin it.
So the same thing we can do with a lame deer.
Okay, true.
I think the main thing over here is what is considered trapping. So it's once it's lame, it can't walk. Are you really trapping it? Because it can't really walk. If it's very old deer and it can't run anymore, so it's not considered trapping.
Right.
Amar le'Abaye le'Rav Yosef, ma'ishnoni. What is the difference between these deer in the first section of the Baisa, a sleeping one or blind one, or the old and the lame, sick? Ani avid le'Rabuye, ani la'avid le'Rabuye. These blind and sleeping deer are prone to slip away when they sense a person is there. But these lame, old, and sick deer are not prone to slip away. V'atanya chayil. If someone traps a sick deer, he is liable. That apparently contradicts the previously cited Baita, which ruled that one is exempt if he traps a sick deer. There is no difficulty. This second brisa refers to a deer that is sick with fever. Such a deer will still run away when someone comes close. The second brisa refers to a deer that is sick with fatigue, which is not able to run away. Tanu Rabbono natzot chagovin gizin tzoim v'yatushim b'Shabbos. Yvonne traps grasshoppers, gizin, and hornets. What is gizin? There are also type of grasshoppers. This is a type of grasshopper that is permitted for consumption. Though writes that they are prohibited for consumption by Jews, are nevertheless useful because Gentiles eat them. So v'yatushim b'Shabbos, and hornets on mosquitoes on Shabbos chayav. Div Rabbi Meir. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Chacham amru kol sheminu nitzut chayav v'kol she'einu b'minu nitzut poter. For trapping any creature whose species is usually trapped, one is liable. But for trapping any creatures whose species is not usually trapped, one is exempt. Tanya idach. It was taught in another brisa. Hatzod chagovim b'shas hatal. If one traps grasshoppers during the time when dew is upon the ground, Potu is exempt. B'shas hashol, but if he traps during a time of intense heat, the hot season, he is liable. Chayav. If they were coming in swarms, he is exempt. What's the difference? Why the time of heat is potu at the time of dew is chayav? tzad chagov b'shas hatal b'shas hashov potu. B'shas hatal potu, b'shas hashov chayav. Why is it when it's dewy is potu, when it's hot is chayav? So it says in 26, it says, when there is dew upon the ground, the eyes of the grasshoppers are blinded, and they are considered to be already trapped. At a time of intense heat, grasshoppers tend to be less
Active.
tend to be less active. Nevertheless, one is liable for trapping them. That's from Rabbeinu Hanan. As Sfas Emes explains why the first case is different from that of a blind deer, for which one is liable for trapping. A deer which is active can run away from potential danger even if it is blind. A blind grasshopper, though, is completely immobilized. See also Menachem Meishiv Nefesh. Okay. But if they come in swarms, these grasshoppers, so he's not liable. Referring to the first section of the Baisa, ruling stringently that even in a time of dew, one is exempt only if the grasshoppers are swarming. Or Seifakai, or is he referring to the last section, ruling leniently that one is exempt during a time of intense heat if they are swarming? Tashma, come learn the answer to your question from the following Baisa. Tzad chagov b'shas hatal, if one traps grasshoppers during a time of dew, potu. B'shas hashorov, but if he traps them during the time of intense heat, chayav is liable. Elozov b'ma'avayemer, afilu b'shas hashorov, even during a time of intense heat, if they were coming in swarms, he is exempt. So it is clear that Elozov b'mehave refers to the Tanakama's last ruling.
So let's say about a mosquito, mosquito lands on you on Shabbos.
Okay, so mosquito, you have to go back to what we just learned before, Kol shebemino nitzad chayav, which means that trapping any creature whose species is usually trapped, one is liable.
I want to go like this to the
So
mosquito.
one is usually trapping mosquitoes. You can argue that mosquito is something that people usually trap, so because they kill them all the time.
Yeah, kill them all the time.
So,
And it could be
then there's a
sakana.
question whether it's sakana or not. Yeah.
You don't know what diseases they're carrying. You know, we had that Zika thing a couple of years ago. Okay, fine.
I think the best thing is to chase them away versus killing them
Yeah, but
on Shabbos.
You know, like let's say you had
You can,
let's say I don't. Okay, I got a good example. Let's say it's Sukkot. You're outside. They're in the
right.
back.
You prepare all those traps
Right,
before.
you do everything. I mean, they still whatever, and you got the. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
So tzvi shenichnas lebayis, if a deer entered a house by itself, and then you come and close the door. The door was open. He entered the house. You didn't drive him into the house like the first, the previous Mishnah.
Voluntarily.
Yeah, and you close the door. Chayav is liable. Now lushnaim. But if two people close the door, they are pturin. Lo yochel echad linoil. If one alone could not close the door, but now lushnaim, and two close. So, if two close the door, they are liable. Rabbi Shimon Peter, Rabbi Shimon, however, exempts them. Amar Rabbi Barabba Shmuel, Tzod Ari b'Shabbos. The Gemara says if one traps a lion on the Shabbos, Eino Chayav, he is not liable. Ad sheyachniseno leguziki shelo, unless he brings it into its cage, which is built specifically to restrain lions. Another Mishnah, Yoshev Echad al Pesach. One person sat in a doorway velo milau, but he did not fully block it. Yoshav Hashenu Milao, and the second person now sit, and now he completely blocked. Hasheni Chav, the second person is liable. Yoshav Hashenu Pesach Milao, if the first person sat by the entrance, and comes the second one and sat next to him, the first one that sat by the entrance already was big enough for a person, or the entrance was small enough that one person closed the door. Not really closing the door, just sitting there. Even though the first person stood up and went away, the first person is liable, the second person is exempt. Even though the second person remained there. It's similar to, this is analogous to, analogs to, right? Analogous to someone who lenolis basel l'shambo, to one who locks his house to safeguard it. And a deer is found to be guarded therein. It wasn't his kavanah, wasn't intention. Okay, we'll continue discussing this tomorrow, God willing.